Humans and magicians coexisted together for years. Mordred, the wizard's leader, however, decides he wants more and sends his army to assault the Camelot realm. Hundreds of magicians and enormous war animals start a fierce attack, but Camelot's defenses are insufficient despite their best efforts. King Uther is advised to surrender by Prince Vortigern, who appears to be feeling queasy due to being so close to magic, but Uther rejects the suggestion. When Uther confronts Mordred face to face with his legendary sword Excalibur in hand, the weapon's strength is sufficient for Uther to vanquish his foe. Later, Uther and his council have a meeting about what they should do with the mages. Sir Bedivere and Sir William remind Uther that the mages aren't bad people. Mordred had only been a bad leader and now he's gone. After all, the sword was given to Uther by the mage Merlin, and Vortigern formerly studied with the mages. Uther acknowledges their argument and consents to cease all hostility toward the magicians, which Vortigern disapproves of. In the dead of night, Vortigern orders his men to prepare before taking his bride to a hidden chamber beneath the castle where she would be sacrificed to the moat hags in exchange for power. Uther tries to wake up his wife and son Arthur in order to flee through the docks as Vortigern's warriors start taking over the castle. However, a demon knight finds them and kills the couple while the baby escapes on a boat that the river takes all the way to Londinium. The boat is found by Lucy and her fellow call girls, so little Arthur grows up in a bawdy house thinking he's the bastard son of one of the working ladies while Vortigern takes over the throne. Arthur is bullied by the other kids in the neighborhood, thus he asks Kung Fu Master George to teach him how to fight. Arthur learns to hone his street smarts, protects the call girls from pushy customers, becomes involved in the neighborhood crime scene, and saves his earnings in a hidden area on the wall. When Arthur is an adult, he is the neighborhood's crime boss, but he continues to experience nightmares in which a demon knight and a dying woman are on the docks. Meanwhile, Vortigern rules over the kingdom cruelly and puts most of his resources into building a giant tower. One morning, he discovers all the water surrounding the castle has receded and this has revealed the location of Excalibur, which is stuck on a rock. Although the soldiers are battling over it, no one appears to be able to remove it. Vortigern worries about the repercussions and returns to the moat hags to remind them that he gave up a loved one to obtain power and that there shouldn't be any barriers. According to the hags, balance must exist because as one side of power increases, so must the other. He must track down Arthur and kill him if he wants to put an end to the sword. Back to Arthur, he surprises Lucy with some money he took from the last man that hit her. Lucy's impressed because that man had been a Viking, and his people can be quite dangerous. At that moment, Jack and a bunch of royal guards show up at the bawdy house looking for a rebel that attacked the king's barge. Arthur is not a fan of the king but he doesn't want to put his beloved ladies in danger, so when he finds William hiding in the bawdy house, he hands him over to the guards. Then Jack asks for a private meeting with Arthur and his childhood friends Tristan and Backlack wanting to know what's going on. Arthur explains he took money from the Vikings because they messed with Lucy and George, and he pretends his team didn't use violence. Jack also asks about the graffiti the neighborhood kids have been painting all over town announcing the return of the born king, but Black promises he's already told his son Blue he must stop. Obviously, Jack doesn't believe a single word and asks Arthur to be more careful because the Vikings are under the protection of the king. A few days later, Vortigern checks on his guard Mercia about the sword, but unfortunately nobody in the royal army has been able to retrieve it. Mercia is worried because every day the rebels get stronger and the people dislike Vortigern more and more. Vortigern asks Maggie, a lady of the king's court, about the opinion of his people, not knowing Maggie secretly works with the resistance and lies when she tells him the people love their king. Satisfied by this answer, Vortigern orders Mercia to concentrate on finishing the tower. Arthur is awakened in the middle of the night by his pals, who tell him that the royal guards are pursuing him. While trying to flee, Arthur is apprehended by the guards on the streets and brought back to Camelot. At the harbor, there's a huge line for the test, so Arthur cuts in to avoid more waiting. As soon as Arthur grabs the sword with both hands, the entire kingdom begins shaking and the runes on the sword glow. To everyone's surprise, Arthur takes the sword out of the rock, but the power overwhelms him so much that he passes out. Later, Arthur wakes up in a cell with Vortigern. The king explains that the sword proves Arthur is Uther's son, but Arthur denies it, saying he's just a call girl's bastard that doesn't want anything. However, Vortigern has already sent his men to investigate the bawdy house and found Arthur's hidden money, which means he does have ambition and he's a threat to Vortigern's throne. Meanwhile, in the rebels' hideout, Rubio brings a mage to see Bedivere. This mage has been sent by Merlin to be Arthur's guide, but she needs Bedivere's help to get to the castle. Moments later, all the people in Camelot gather around the castle to see the born king. Vortigern wants to use this chance to get their respect through fear, and Arthur must play along. If he doesn't surrender the power to Vortigern, then his guards will kill Lucy. Arthur is given the choice to seize Excalibur and defend himself when they emerge in front of the people, but he declines to do so to defend his working girls. Arthur is referred to be a peace disruptor, and he will perish for the good of the country. The mage sends an eagle to stop the guards from killing Arthur, driving all the horses and hounds insane in the process. The crowd begins running away and the guards concentrate on protecting the king, giving Bedivere and the rebels the chance to rescue Arthur and retrieve Excalibur. As the working girls take the chance to escape, Arthur runs away with the rebels and the mage while fighting the guards in the middle of the chaos. 2 rebels are killed in the process, but this allows the group to get away safely by jumping into a river. Eventually, they reach the rebels' hideout, where Arthur is surprised William escaped arrest and is here too. Bedivere and William explain that Arthur's neighborhood has been torched and he can't go back. They also want to see what he can do with the sword. Arthur pretends he doesn't want to fight before he begins to easily beat some rebels up. When it's William's turn, Arthur grips Excalibur with both hands, sending William into another coma as his mind starts to race with visions. Later, when the mage performs a ritual to comprehend the sword, Arthur is awakened by his customary nightmares. His younger self is seen giving Uther the sword in this nightmare, which explains the scars he's always had on his hands. The mage tells him he's resisting the sword and Arthur denies it, saying he isn't the legendary king they want. However, he accepts to give this a chance when the mage points out she can get rid of the nightmares. Afterward, the mage asks Bedivere to take Arthur to the Dark Lands. Arthur is dropped at an island, where the mage tells him he must reach the tower and touch the altar stone with the sword. Arthur isn't too worried because he thinks it'll be just like camping, but after he's left alone he learns that the island is full of terrifying creatures. This forces him to use the sword more to defend himself, killing any monster that gets in his way. After a few days of raw survival, Arthur reaches the top of an old tower and puts the sword on the altar stone, which immediately glows and scares all beasts away. When the demon knight killed the queen, Uther pursued the knight with Excalibur. According to Arthur's full recall of the night, his family perished as a result of the magic taking control of his mind. Little Arthur returned the sword that Uther had dropped during the battle before his father ordered him to go. Little Arthur jumped on the boat and let the river guide him as he closed his eyes not to witness his father's death. Excalibur fell on the back of Uther's body, transforming him into the stone that took the sword down into the water. The demon knight took off his magical veil and revealed his identity to be Vortigern, who planned this whole thing on purpose. After the vision, Arthur passes out and he must be rescued by Bedivere and the mage. Arthur realizes that the island tower is the same as the one Vortigern is building in Camelot, and the mage explains Vortigern will become as powerful as Mordred when he finishes it. That's why the sword showed up now. Bedivere points out it was Vortigern who started the war against the mages in the first place. He made a deal that he would share power with Mordred if he killed Uther. Mordred accepted, killed the Mage King, and took the royal staff to the tower to unlock the dark forces. However, Merlin stole the staff later and made Excalibur with it, using it to destroy the tower. Then he gave Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake, who bound it to Uther's bloodline. When they return to the hideout, Arthur's friends are waiting for him, and they confirm their neighborhood has been burned down by Jack and Mercia while looking for him. They managed to rescue the working girls and a few friends, but most people ran away. Arthur is incensed by this and intends to take revenge by killing Vortigern. Following that, Arthur introduces his pals to the insurgents, and they start formulating a strategy. Arthur declines William's request to meet with the barons of the most significant families in the realm to solicit their support. He points out that those posh lords would never accept him as a leader for being a poor guy with no education, and it's important for the rebels to be the ones in charge. Instead, Arthur proposes to lure Vortigern out of the castle and make him come to Londinium by hurting what he cares about the most, the tower. They begin by sinking the barges carrying the supply of stone and blocking up the river. Then they use William's information on the king's transportation routes to rescue all the kids that are being used as slaves. One of the working ladies knows the man that supplies brandy to Vortigern's favorite palace, so they use it to blow up the premises. All this forces Vortigern to make a deal with the Vikings, even if means accepting shady terms. Before leaving, the Vikings show worry over Vortigern losing his power because they also heard rumors about the born king. In an effort to regain control, Vortigern convenes a conference of all the barons of Londinium and then travels to the Tower to start enhancing his abilities. Maggie shows up at the hideout shortly after and informs everyone of Vortigern's upcoming meeting, prompting the rebels to devise a plan to kill Vortigern when he visits Londinium. They need a safe building to shoot from, so William proves he can kill anyone with his bow from 175 yards. When the day comes, Arthur watches the king arrive in a carriage and he can't help thinking this is too easy. It turns out this is all a trap and Vortigern is hiding with Maggie in a boat because he knows she is spying on him and used her to set this up. Arthur can tell the king on the street is an actor, but William decides to shoot anyway in order to kill Mercia. The guards immediately raise the alarm and begin searching the town for the rebels. Arthur's group tries to hide in the crowd, but the guards find them, and a fierce battle begins, during which Backlack gets hurt. He tells them to go ahead without him, and the group continues to fight through the streets, causing Rubio to get hurt as well. Rubio stays behind too to distract the guards while the group sneaks into George's school because he has a secret tunnel they can use to escape. However, everyone here refuses to be running cowards and they stay to fight. The guards burst in and a huge battle begins during which the mage tries to help by commanding her birds. Her plan doesn't work and she gets captured, which makes Arthur so angry that he grabs Excalibur with both hands and defeats the entire army in a matter of seconds. This demonstration of power is seen by the neighbors through their windows. The rebels then decide to hide out in a safe house until nightfall in order to wait for Backlack and Blue. People are starting to riot in the streets as word of Arthur's abilities spreads, but he still refuses to take charge. A few hours later, Blue brings Backlack to the safe house, but Backlack tells Arthur to leave without him since he is dying. Arthur drags Blue away right before Vortigern arrives with his guards, who found the safe house when they followed the kid around. Backlack pretends to know nothing, but the interrogation is interrupted by Blue, who has come back because he refuses to abandon his father. Sensing the danger, Blue pretends he's just the cleaner and that he doesn't know Backlack. Vortigern doesn't believe him and cuts Backlack's ear as a test, causing Blue to start screaming. Arthur comes back and grabs a guard as a threat, so Vortigern responds by killing Backlack. This distraction allows Arthur to grab Blue and run to the boats. Now the rebels can finally escape safely. Afterward, Vortigern orders his guards to capture or kill any person that is trying to rebel on the streets. When they return to the hideout, Arthur thinks about all the lives that were lost just for him, so he decides to throw the sword into the lake and run away. The sword is found by the Lady of the Lake, and when Arthur falls in the mud, the lady grabs him to bring him into her lair and show him what Vortigern will do if he isn't stopped. Arthur watches a vision of Camelot completely in ruins under Vortigern's cruelty and finally accepts the sword. Before letting go, the lady reminds him that Vortigern must be fought in the tower and that Arthur must trust the mage. When the rebels find Arthur, he's roaring with the power of the glowing sword. Meanwhile, Vortigern captures Rubio and hurts him until he gives up information. Moments later, Arthur learns that riots are spreading all over the country in his name. The rebels return to their hiding place to prepare after Arthur declares that he is prepared to storm the castle and seize control. Sadly, they arrive to find a bloodbath and a royal guard bearing a letter from Vortigern demanding that Arthur return to the castle before nightfall or they will kill Blue and the mage. Bedivere is the one who travels to the castle because he wants to confirm whether the hostages are still alive. Vortigern agrees to exchange Excalibur for the mage and to wait for Arthur until morning. Once the mage reunites with the rebels, she decides it's time to awaken what is inside Arthur. She summons a snake that bites Arthur's neck, and its poison makes him able to see all the magical creatures that hide in nature. The mage also promises this poison will protect him later. A few hours later, Arthur arrives at the castle while the mage makes her eagle drop a snake inside. Arthur is taken to see the king, but when Vortigern's about to kill his nephew, he notices the snake on a pillar. Vortigern kills the snake and accidentally gets the sword stuck in the stone, so now he can't take it out. At that moment, the mage sends a giant snake into the castle, and the beast kills all the guards while Arthur retrieves Excalibur. In the streets, the rebels rescue all the prisoners to inspire them to restart the riots. Vortigern wants more power, and the hags remind him there's a price for it. Seeing no other choice, Vortigern looks for his daughter and kills her as he cries in agony. Then he takes the body to the hags and becomes the demon knight again. Outside, Arthur battles any guard that gets in his way and easily defeats them thanks to the power of his sword. The guards are so scared that they drop their weapons to let him pass. Excalibur responds to the power in the tower when Arthur enters it as the rebels approach to seize control of the castle. A ferocious battle starts after Arthur is transferred to the tower's top where Vortigern is waiting. As a result of his sacrifice, Vortigern gained great strength and quickly defeated Arthur. The poison starts to work as Vortigern declares that the sword is now his, causing Arthur to see one more vision. This time Arthur doesn't close his eyes when Uther dies and grabs the sword before it sinks into his father's body. Uther tells Arthur the sword is his now, and Arthur wakes up, finding Excalibur glowing with power. Arthur immediately grabs it and fights Vortigern again with much better control of the sword's powers. Vortigern is hit over and over, and Arthur finally manages to kill him as he points out he became whom he is thanks to Vortigern sending him to the streets in the first place. Arthur even kisses Vortigern's hand to further emphasize the irony of his point. Then he summons the magic of Excalibur to cause the tower as a whole to collapse. The kingdom bids all the lives lost in the conflict a final farewell the next day. Following that, Arthur displays to his group the circular table he has selected for their meetings and requests that Bedivere knight his friends. Lastly, William himself knights Arthur, making him the official king. Sometime later, the Vikings show up to ask for their part of the deal, threatening war if they don't get what they want. The Vikings are forced to bow down and accept Arthur as the new king of England and an ally because he doesn't back down and reminds them of his strength. In front of a sizable throng, Bedivere crowns Arthur, who then lifts his sword and promises to defend his people.